You're lying in bed right now, staring at the ceiling, replaying that conversation again. The one where they twisted your words, made you doubt yourself, left you feeling crazy. Your heart's beating a little faster, isn't it? That knot in your stomach, the one that's become so familiar you barely notice it anymore, it's tightening. You're wondering if you're the problem, if maybe they're right, if you really are too sensitive, too needy, too much. Stop. Breathe. I see you, and I know exactly what you've been through. Because narcissists don't wear name tags. They wear masks, perfect, glittering masks that hide the emptiness beneath. They're the charming co-worker, the passionate lover, the devoted friend, the caring parent. Until they're not. Until they've sunk their hooks so deep into your psyche that you can't tell where their reality ends and yours begins. Tonight, we rip those masks off. Tonight, we expose the playbook they never wanted you to see. Tonight, you finally understand that the crazy-making fog you've been living in isn't an accident, it's a strategy. A carefully orchestrated campaign to break you down piece by piece until you're nothing but a shell they can fill with whatever they need. The first thing you need to know is that narcissists aren't playing the same game as the rest of us. When you connect with someone, you're looking for mutual understanding, for give and take, for the beautiful dance of two souls sharing space. The narcissist, they're looking for supply, for adoration, for control. They don't see you as a person, they see you as a resource to be mined until there's nothing left. That's why it feels so confusing, so disorienting. You're playing chess, they're playing poker, and they've stacked the deck. They're not trying to understand you, they're trying to figure out which buttons to push to get what they want. And they've gotten very, very good at pushing those buttons. Think about the first time you met them. How they seemed to see you in a way no one else ever had. How they mirrored your interests, your dreams, your deepest desires. How they made you feel special, chosen, almost intoxicated with attention. That wasn't coincidence. That was the first dark tactic, love bombing. Love bombing is the narcissist's opening move. They study you like a textbook, figuring out exactly what you've been missing, what you crave, what makes your heart sing. Then they become that thing, the perfect partner, the perfect friend, the perfect missing piece to your puzzle. And it feels amazing, doesn't it? Like finding home after being lost for years. But here's what's really happening. They're creating an addiction. A powerful, all-consuming addiction to their approval, their presence, their love. They're setting the bar impossibly high so that later when they start to withdraw, you'll do anything to get that high back. You'll change yourself. You'll excuse the inexcusable. You'll twist yourself into knots trying to figure out what you did wrong, why the person who once thought you hung the moon now seems irritated by your very existence. And that withdrawal isn't random. It's calculated. Just when you think you can't take another moment of their coldness, they throw you a crumb of affection. Just enough to keep hope alive. Just enough to make you think that if you just try harder, if you're just a little better, a little more perfect, you can get back to that golden beginning. This is the second tactic, intermittent reinforcement. It's the most powerful conditioning tool on the planet. It's how casinos keep gamblers at slot machines for hours, feeding in coin after coin for that unpredictable dopamine hit of a win. Except you're not gambling with money, you're gambling with your sense of self, your sanity, your soul. You start to live for those moments of warmth, those brief glimpses of the person you fell for, and you become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs of their mood, adjusting your behavior accordingly. Walking on eggshells becomes your new normal. The constant anxiety, the pit in your stomach when you hear their key in the door, the relief when they smile at you instead of through you, this becomes your life. And slowly, insidiously, you stop trusting your own perceptions. That's by design, because the third tactic is the most insidious of all, gaslighting. The slow, methodical dismantling of your reality until you can't trust your own mind. I never said that. You're overreacting. That never happened. You're remembering it wrong. You're too sensitive. Words that burrow under your skin, that make you question your memory, your perceptions, your sanity. They rewrite history in front of your eyes, and because you've already been conditioned to seek their approval, to fear their withdrawal, you start to believe them over yourself. This is how they break you. Not with violence, not with obvious cruelty, but with the slow erosion of your sense of self until you're a ghost in your own life, desperately seeking validation from the very person who's destroying you. And the worst part, you blame yourself. You think if you could just be better, try harder, understand more, explain more clearly, they would stop treating you this way. You think you're the problem. You're not. You never were. Tonight, as you lie in bed replaying those interactions, feeling that familiar ache of confusion and self-doubt, I want you to understand something. This was never about your worth. It was about their emptiness. The narcissist's greatest fear is being exposed as hollow, as lacking the depth and humanity the rest of us take for granted. Their greatest terror is being seen for what they really are. Avoid wearing a human mask. That's why they need you to be smaller, why they need you to doubt yourself, why they need you broken. Because a whole, confident you might see through them, might realize that behind the smoke and mirrors there's nothing there. So here you are in the aftermath, trying to put together the broken pieces of your understanding. You glance at your phone, half hoping they'll text, half dreading it. The rational part of your brain knows they're poison, but your heart still craves the antidote only they seem to hold. That push-pull is the hook still buried in your flesh. Let's pull it out. The fourth dark tactic is one that leaves you feeling like you're losing your mind: projection. This is where they take everything dark and twisted inside themselves and hurl it at you with such conviction you start to believe it's yours. You know the drill. They're cheating, suddenly they're obsessed with checking your phone. They're lying, suddenly they're calling you dishonest. They're selfish, suddenly you're the one who never thinks about anyone else. It's like living in a house of mirrors where everything gets reflected back distorted. Why do they do this? Because a narcissist will not look at their own darkness. The self-hatred lurking beneath their grandiose facade is too painful to face, so they find the perfect dumping ground: you. You with your empathy. You with your willingness to examine yourself, to take responsibility, to grow. You become the carrier of all their disowned parts. And you accept it because you think that's what love is, helping someone bear their burdens. But there's a difference between supporting someone through their struggles and becoming a toxic waste site for their unprocessed shame. One builds connection, the other destroys it. The most insidious part, they actually believe their projections. When they call you selfish in that moment, they're convinced it's true. Their capacity for self-deception is limitless, which makes your reality feel like quicksand. How do you argue with someone who rewrites the script in real time and believes their own lies? You don't. That's the trap. The more you defend yourself, the more they twist your words, the deeper you sink. You can show them evidence, call witnesses, present a bulletproof case, and they'll still walk away convinced of your guilt. Because this isn't about facts. It's about their desperate need to escape their own emptiness. Let's move to the fifth tactic, the one that really turns the knife: triangulation. This is where they bring other people into your relationship dynamic to make you feel replaceable, jealous, and insecure. It might be subtle at first, casually mentioning how their ex really understood them, making sure you overhear them having an amazing conversation with someone else, name-dropping the person at work who always has their back. Suddenly you're competing for a position you already earned, auditioning for a role you already had. As it escalates, they might openly flirt with others in front of you, compare you unfavorably to friends or colleagues, tell you how someone else thinks you're being unreasonable in an argument, someone who conveniently has only heard their twisted version of events. The message is clear: you are replaceable. Others want what you have. You should be grateful they choose you at all. This creates a vicious psychological state. You're constantly on edge, desperately trying to prove your worth, competing with ghosts and strangers for crumbs of affection. The world narrows to this desperate dance for approval. You no longer focus on whether they're good enough for you, only on proving you're good enough for them. But here's what's really happening. They need to keep you off balance. Your insecurity is their power source. Every time you feel that stab of jealousy, that flutter of fear that you're losing them, your focus narrows to winning them back. You stop noticing the red flags. You stop enforcing boundaries. You accept treatment you swore you never would. And it doesn't end with romantic partners. A narcissistic parent triangulates siblings, making them compete for limited love and approval. A narcissistic friend plants seeds of doubt about your other friendships. A narcissistic boss pits employees against each other, feeding on the drama and desperation. These 5 tactics, love bombing, intermittent reinforcement, gaslighting, projection, and triangulation, form a perfect storm that dismantles your sense of self piece by piece. It's psychological warfare designed to create a very specific outcome: your complete emotional surrender. Now, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, maybe you're recognizing these patterns. Maybe your stomach is knotting as memories click into place. That's good. That's your body recognizing the truth your mind has been struggling to accept. That's the first step toward freedom. Because once you see the game, you can't unsee it. Once you name the tactics, they lose power. What worked in the shadows withers in the light. That hollow feeling in your chest, it's not because you're broken or unlovable. It's because you've been systematically manipulated by someone who knows exactly which buttons to push to get what they want. So what now? First, breathe. Just breathe. Feel your chest rise and fall. Feel the weight of your body on the bed. You are here. You are real. Your perceptions matter. Your feelings are valid. The confusion and pain you've been carrying, it makes perfect sense given what you've been through. You're not crazy. You're wounded. Tomorrow we'll talk about how to heal those wounds, how to reclaim the parts of yourself that were twisted and diminished, how to build back your reality on solid ground, not shifting sand. But tonight, just let this knowledge sink in. This was never about your worth. It was always about their emptiness. And that emptiness, it's a black hole. No matter how much light you pour into it, it will never be filled. You could give until there's nothing left of you, and it wouldn't be enough. Not because you aren't enough, but because their hunger is infinite. Their need can never be satisfied because it comes from a place so deep, so primal, that no external validation can ever reach it. So tonight, as you close your eyes, picture yourself setting down that burden. It was never yours to carry. Let your body soften into the bed. Let your breath slow. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to understand them. You just have to save yourself. And that journey begins now with this simple, powerful truth. What happened to you was real. Their tactics were real. Your pain is real. And your healing will be real too. You just need to take the first step, seeing clearly what's been hidden in plain sight all along. Morning comes, and for a second, just a second, you forget what you're dealing with. Then reality crashes back, and that familiar heaviness settles in your chest. You check your phone. Did they text? Did they call? Are they still angry? The day stretches ahead, and already you're exhausted from calculating every possible mood, every potential landmine. This is what living with a narcissist does. It turns your life into a never-ending anxiety dream where the rules keep changing and the floor might disappear at any moment. Here's something they don't tell you about narcissistic abuse. It rewires your brain, literally changes how your neurons fire. The constant stress, the walking on eggshells, the hypervigilance, it floods your system with cortisol until your body forgets how to relax. You're scanning for threats even in safe spaces. Your stomach clenches when someone uses a certain tone of voice. Your shoulders live somewhere around your ears. This isn't just emotional distress, it's physical trauma stored in your body. And it happens so gradually you don't notice until you're drowning. That's what makes it so effective. If they slapped you on the first date, you'd run. But emotional abuse, it's like boiling a frog. The water heats so slowly you don't realize you're cooking until it's too late. Let's talk about how these 5 tactics escalate when the narcissist feels threatened, when you start to see through the cracks, when you assert boundaries, when their control slips. Because that's when things get really nasty. When love bombing doesn't work anymore, they switch to its evil twin, devaluation. This is where they tear down everything they once built up. Remember how they used to praise your sense of humor? Now you're trying too hard and embarrassing yourself. Remember how they couldn't get enough of your stories? Now you're self-centered and never listen. Remember how they loved your independence? Now you're selfish and never make them a priority. It's like emotional whiplash. The person who once thought you hung the moon now acts like you're dirt beneath their feet. And it happens overnight with no explanation. They rewrite history so completely that you start to wonder if those golden days ever existed at all. Was it all in your head? Were you imagining how good it used to be? No, it was real, the admiration, the connection, the love. But it wasn't sustainable because it wasn't based on who you really are. It was based on what they needed from you in that moment. And now they need something else. Your submission, your insecurity, your desperate attempts to win back their approval. They need to see that they still control you completely. When intermittent reinforcement starts to lose its grip, when you stop jumping through hoops for those random crumbs of affection, they escalate to something even more destabilizing: chaos creation. Suddenly your life is an endless series of dramas, emergencies and crises, all centering around them. They pick fights before important events. They have meltdowns when you need to focus on work. They create health scares when you're trying to visit family. They lose important documents, forget critical appointments, or pick fights with people you care about. Nothing is ever stable, nothing is ever peaceful, and nothing is ever more important than their immediate needs. This chaos serves a purpose. It keeps you off balance and firmly focused on them. While you're putting out fires, you can't step back and see the pattern. You can't build a support network, pursue your goals, or even catch your breath. Your entire existence narrows to managing their moods and minimizing damage. And that's exactly where they want you: exhausted, isolated, and completely under their control. When gaslighting isn't enough to make you doubt yourself, they move to a more aggressive tactic: reality revision. This goes beyond denying specific events. This is where they create an entire alternate reality and force you to live in it. In their revised reality, you're the abuser and they're the victim. You're the crazy one and they're the rational one. All your friends secretly hate you. Your family talks about how difficult you are. Everyone can see how unstable you are except you. They tell these stories with such conviction that you start to wonder. Maybe you are the problem. Maybe you have been cruel without realizing it. Maybe everyone is just tolerating you. The doubt creeps in like poison, infecting every relationship, every interaction, every moment of self-reflection. And here's the truly insidious part. They recruit others to reinforce this revised reality. They tell carefully edited versions of your conflicts to friends and family, painting themselves as concerned, patient saints dealing with your unreasonable behavior. By the time you reach out for support, the narrative is already established. People give you that look, half pity, half skepticism. They just care about you. They're trying their best. Maybe try to see it from their perspective. Your support system becomes another tool of your gaslighting. When projection stops working, when you start to recognize that their accusations are actually confessions, they move to preemptive strikes. They accuse you of planning things you've never even considered. They create elaborate stories about your intentions, your secret plans, your hidden agendas. They tell you what you're thinking before you've even had the thought. I know you're just waiting for me to fail. You want me to look bad in front of everyone. You're trying to turn my family against me. These accusations come out of nowhere, leaving you scrambling to defend yourself against crimes you never committed. The conversation becomes so twisted that you forget your original point. You walk away feeling confused, exhausted, and vaguely guilty for something you didn't do. This is gaslighting on steroids. It doesn't just make you doubt your perceptions, it makes you doubt your intentions, your goodness, your very character. Are you secretly the manipulative one? Are you unconsciously sabotaging them? Are you really as kind as you think you are? The questions gnaw at you until your self-image starts to crumble. And when triangulation isn't causing enough insecurity, they escalate to full-blown smear campaigns. They don't just hint that others might prefer them, they actively poison your relationships from the inside out. They tell your friends you've been saying terrible things about them. They tell your family you've changed, you're unstable, you need help. They reach out to your exes, your colleagues, even casual acquaintances to express concern about your mental health. By the time you realize what's happening, they've created a web of doubt around you so thick that your credibility is shot. Who's going to believe your claims of abuse when everyone's been told you're delusional? This isolation is deliberate. A person alone is easier to control. A person without external reality checks is easier to gaslight. A person desperate for any human connection will accept even abusive attention rather than face complete abandonment. So there you are, devalued, destabilized, doubtful, defensive, and increasingly disconnected from anyone who might help you see the truth. This is the end game of narcissistic abuse. Not just controlling you in the moment, but fundamentally altering how you see yourself and the world. But here's what they don't count on. The human spirit is resilient. Even in the darkest places, even when you're most lost, there's a small flame of truth that never quite goes out. A quiet voice that whispers, "This isn't right." It might be faint, almost imperceptible beneath the narcissist's constant noise, but it's there. Tonight, as you lie in bed, try to listen for that voice. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It simply knows. And what it knows is this: you deserve better. You are not crazy. Your reality matters. Your perceptions are valid. Your needs are important. The way you're being treated is not okay. That voice is your way out. That voice is the first crack in their carefully constructed reality. That voice is the beginning of your freedom. That voice inside you, the one that whispers truth when everything else is chaos, is your lifeline. The narcissist has spent months, maybe years, trying to smother it. They've called you crazy when you were sane, sensitive when you were reasonable, selfish when you were simply asking for basic respect. They've worked overtime to replace your inner voice with theirs. But they didn't quite succeed, did they? Something in you still knows. Something in you is still fighting. Let's talk about the toll this takes. Not just mentally, but physically. Your body keeps the score. That constant knot in your stomach. It's stress manifesting as digestive issues. Those headaches. Tension from perpetually bracing for the next attack. The fatigue that weighs you down like wet cement. That's your nervous system stuck in fight or flight, burning through resources you don't have. The insomnia, the weight changes, the mysterious aches and pains that doctors can't quite diagnose, they're not in your head. They're real. They're your body screaming what your mind hasn't fully accepted. You're in danger. You try to explain this to friends, to family, maybe even to therapists, but the words tangle. How do you describe emotional abuse to someone who hasn't lived it? How do you explain that yes, they're charming in public, yes, they can be incredibly sweet, yes, there are good times, but those good times are part of the abuse? It's like trying to explain water to someone who's only lived in the desert. There's no frame of reference. And that's by design. Narcissists isolate you not just physically, but linguistically. They create a private language where words mean different things, where I love you means I own you, where I'm concerned about you means you're not behaving the way I want, where we need to talk means I'm going to break you down for hours until you apologize for something you didn't do. They twist language. They weaponize concern. They pathologize normal emotions. If you're angry, you're out of control. If you're sad, you're manipulating them. If you're happy about something unrelated to them, you're ignoring their needs. Every feeling becomes evidence of your deficiencies. Every need becomes proof of your selfishness. This is how they control not just your behavior, but your internal landscape. They become the filter through which you interpret your own experiences. You start to police your thoughts, editing them before they even fully form. What would they think about this? How would they react if they knew I felt this way? The self-censorship becomes so automatic you don't even notice it anymore. That's the goal, making their voice louder than yours even when they're not in the room. Then there's the trauma bonding, the powerful biochemical addiction that forms in abusive relationships. It's not just emotional, it's physiological. The cycle of tension, explosion, and reconciliation creates a roller coaster of stress hormones followed by flooding relief. The contrast between pain and those moments of intense reconnection rewires your brain until you're literally addicted to the cycle. This is why leaving feels like withdrawal. This is why you miss them even though they hurt you. This is why you find yourself romanticizing the relationship, remembering only the highs while minimizing the devastating lows. Your brain is desperate for another hit of the only drug it's come to recognize as love. Understanding this addiction is crucial because it explains why you keep going back, why you keep checking their social media, why you pick up the phone when they call months later. It's not weakness. It's not stupidity, it's a biochemical response to psychological trauma. And like any addiction, it can be overcome, but not by willpower alone. You need tools, you need support, you need to understand exactly what you're dealing with so you can fight it effectively. So let's start building your arsenal. First, documentation. The narcissist thrives on your self-doubt, on your foggy memory of incidents. They rewrite history with such conviction that you start to question what actually happened. Combat this by keeping records, a journal entry after arguments, screenshots of text conversations, emails saved in a folder they can't access, voice memos to yourself after confusing interactions. This isn't paranoia, it's self-protection. When they inevitably say, "I never said that," you'll have evidence that yes, they absolutely did. Second, reality anchors. These are people, activities, or places that connect you to who you were before the narcissist began their remodeling project on your psyche. The old friend who knew you when you were confident and vibrant. The hobby you abandoned because they subtly mocked it. The coffee shop where you used to write, think, dream before they consumed your mental space. Reconnect with these anchors. They remind you who you really are beneath the narcissist's projections. Third, pattern recognition. Narcissistic abuse follows predictable cycles. Tension builds, explosion happens, reconciliation feels euphoric, calm period restores hope. Then tension builds again. Start tracking these cycles. Notice the triggers. Observe how the time between explosions shortens while the reconciliation gets less satisfying. Seeing the pattern helps you step outside it, helps you realize this isn't a series of isolated incidents, but a systematic campaign of control. Fourth, boundaries not as negotiation, but as fortress walls. With normal people, boundaries are a conversation. With narcissists, they're non-negotiable declarations. I will not discuss this when you're raising your voice. I will end this call if you insult me. I need space and I'm taking it regardless of how you feel about it. Then follow through immediately every time. No second chances. No, just this once. The boundary is only as strong as your willingness to enforce it. Fifth, the gray rock method. When you can't avoid interaction, become the most boring, unreactive person imaginable. No emotional displays. No defending yourself. No trying to make them understand. Short, factual responses. Zero engagement with provocations. This deprives them of the emotional fuel they're seeking. No drama, no reaction, no reward for their behavior. These tools won't fix the narcissist. Nothing will. That's the brutal truth you need to accept. They aren't misunderstood. They aren't wounded souls needing your compassion to heal. They're individuals with a personality structure that fundamentally prevents them from seeing you as fully human. Your pain isn't a tragedy to them, it's a tool. Your tears aren't a signal to comfort, they're proof of their power. This isn't pessimism, it's liberation. Once you stop trying to make them see, understand, or change, you can focus your energy where it actually matters, on saving yourself. Tonight, as you lie in bed with these thoughts swirling, I want you to try something. Place a hand on your heart. Feel it beating beneath your palm. That heartbeat is yours. That body is yours. that life is yours, not theirs to control, manipulate, or diminish. Yours. Whisper to yourself, I see what's happening. I'm not crazy. I deserve better. Say it until you feel that small flame of truth grow just a little brighter. That's your power rekindling. That's your self-reclaiming territory. That's the beginning of the long journey back to wholeness. And tomorrow we'll talk about how to walk away, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. How to break the addiction. How to rebuild what they tried to destroy. How to ensure that the next chapter of your story is written in your voice, not theirs. The hardest part of breaking free from a narcissist isn't the leaving, it's the staying gone. It's the 3 moments when loneliness crushes your chest and their voice echoes in your head. No one will ever love you like I do. It's the doubt that creeps in when the initial surge of courage fades. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I'm overreacting. It's the exhaustion of rebuilding your reality brick by brick while they're still trying to tear down the foundation. When you first try to leave, whether it's setting a firm boundary, taking space, or making a clean break, brace yourself for what experts call narcissistic injury. This is when their facade cracks, revealing the wounded, rageful core beneath the charm. They feel exposed and they'll do anything to regain control. First comes the rage, cold, calculated fury designed to terrify you back into compliance. They might threaten, scream, break things, or turn physically intimidating. This isn't a loss of control, it's a strategic display meant to show you the consequences of defiance. They're betting that fear will make you back down. And often it works. If rage doesn't pull you back, they'll switch tactics faster than you can blink. Suddenly they're devastated, broken, unable to live without you. The tears flow, the promises pile up. I'll get therapy. I'll never do it again. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. They might even make a few surface changes to prove they're working on themselves. This performance is so convincing because in that moment they believe it themselves. They're not consciously lying, they're instinctively doing whatever it takes to regain supply. The promises aren't calculated, they're desperate. And that sincerity is what makes them so dangerous. Because you want to believe. God, do you want to believe? If the tearful begging doesn't work, they escalate to what therapists call hoovering, trying to suck you back in by any means necessary. They show up at your door with meaningful gifts. They enlist mutual friends to plead their case. They manufacture emergencies that only you can help with. They reminisce about your perfect early days together. They find exactly the right words to slip past your defenses. And if all that fails, they go for the throat. They smear your name to everyone who will listen. They threaten to expose your secrets, ruin your career, take your children. They spread lies so outrageous you can't believe anyone would fall for them, but people do. They twist the reality of your relationship so completely that you become the unstable, abusive one, and they become the long-suffering victim who finally escaped. This scorched earth campaign serves 2 purposes: punishing you for leaving and ensuring that if they can't have you, your life will be so miserable you'll wish you'd stayed. This isn't hyperbole. This is the playbook. This is what happens when you threaten the narcissist's supply. So how do you survive this onslaught? How do you stay gone when every emotional and social force is trying to pull you back? You start with no contact, not low contact, not friendly contact. No, contact. Block their number. Block their email. Block them on social media, not just unfollow, block. Tell mutual friends you don't want updates on their life. Create a digital and physical fortress around yourself. This isn't petty. This isn't immature. This is survival. Because every point of contact is an opportunity for them to manipulate you, to rewrite your reality, to wear down your resolve. Every message, every accidental run-in, every update from a well-meaning friend reactivates the addiction pathways in your brain. It resets the withdrawal clock. If complete no contact isn't possible, if you share children, work in the same place, or have unavoidable legal entanglements, you implement what therapists call the grey rock method. You make yourself as boring and unreactive as a grey rock. Minimal responses, no emotional engagement, no defending yourself, no arguing back, no revealing personal information. You become so dull that they eventually look elsewhere for the drama they crave. Now comes the hardest part, the withdrawal. Because make no mistake, you are detoxing from a powerful biochemical addiction. Your body doesn't know the relationship was toxic. It only knows the cycles of intensity were as potent as any drug. You will crave contact. You will romanticize the relationship. You will physically ache for closure, for one last conversation, for the apology you'll never get. This is when you're most vulnerable to breaking no contact. This is when the 3M demons whisper that maybe they've changed, maybe it's worth one more try, maybe you'll never find that intensity again. Those whispers aren't truth, they're withdrawal talking. They're your brain begging for another hit of the neurochemical roller coaster that nearly destroyed you. So you ride it out. You white-knuckle through the worst days. You call a friend instead of them. You write the angry letter and burn it instead of sending it. You remind yourself that this pain is temporary, but going back would start the cycle all over again. While your body detoxes from the addiction, your mind begins the slow process of deconstructing their version of reality and rebuilding your own. This is cognitive reframing, and it's essential to long-term healing. Start by naming the tactics. When a memory surfaces, they said I was crazy for being upset when they disappeared for 2 days, label it. That was gaslighting. When you catch yourself thinking, maybe they're right, maybe I am too sensitive, recognize it. That's their voice, not mine. When you feel guilty for setting boundaries, identify it. This is what happens when healthy needs have been pathologized. Next, challenge the core beliefs they installed. Make a list of everything they said was wrong with you. Every criticism, every dismissive comment, every "if only you were more X or less Y." Then systematically question each one. Where's the evidence? Who else in your life says this about you? Did you believe this before them? Would you say this to someone you love? This isn't about pretending you're perfect. It's about separating legitimate self-improvement from their campaign of erosion. As you rebuild, you'll start to rediscover parts of yourself that went into hiding during the relationship. Interests you abandoned because they subtly mocked them. Friendships you let fade because maintaining them was more trouble than it was worth. Personality traits you suppressed because they triggered criticism or coldness. Welcome these parts back without judgment. The you who loves cheesy movies. The you who laughs too loud. The you who has strong opinions. The you who needs downtime, who cries easily, who gets excited about small things. These aren't flaws to fix, they're facets of your humanity. They're what make you real in a way the narcissist can never be. This reclamation is slow. There will be days when you feel strong, whole, like yourself again. And there will be days when you slip back into old thought patterns, when you doubt your worth, when you wonder if you're overreacting. Progress isn't linear. Healing isn't a straight line. It's more like a spiral. You might revisit the same territory, but each time you do, you're at a different level, seeing it with new eyes. Tonight, as you lie in the quiet dark, feeling the weight of this journey ahead, know that thousands have walked this path before you. They felt the same fear, the same doubt, the same overwhelming fatigue, and they've made it to the other side. Not perfect, not unscarred, but whole, real, free. You can too. One day, 1 hour, 1 moment at a time. Your freedom starts now with the simple, radical act of reclaiming your reality from the one who tried to steal it. And tomorrow we'll talk about how to ensure you never fall prey to these tactics again. The morning after you finally break free has a strange quality, like emerging from a cave into sunlight that's both blinding and healing. Your senses are heightened. Colors seem sharper. Sounds clearer. It's disorienting, this sudden shift from the muted world of survival to the vivid landscape of freedom. But with this awakening comes a primal fear. What if it happens again? What if I fall for another mask, another perfect reflection of what I want? How do I trust anyone, including myself, after this? These questions aren't paranoia. They're wisdom. Your body and mind paid a steep price for this education, and now they're trying to protect you from repeating the class. So let's talk about how to ensure you never hand your reality over to a narcissist again. The first step is understanding that narcissists don't just randomly appear in your life. They select targets with specific traits. This isn't victim blaming, it's recognizing patterns so you can disrupt them. Narcissists look for empaths, people with deep compassion who are willing to see the best in others. They seek out fixers, those who believe love can heal any wound. They target high achievers with insecurities, people whose outward success masks a deep fear they're never quite enough. These aren't weaknesses. These are beautiful human qualities that make you capable of profound connection. The goal isn't to eradicate your empathy or your desire to help others. It's to pair these qualities with discernment, the ability to recognize when someone is worthy of your emotional investment. So what are the red flags? What signals should send your internal alarm blaring? First, the rush. Narcissists move quickly, pushing for instant intimacy, declaring you're different from anyone they've ever met, making you feel like the protagonist in a romantic movie. They don't respect the natural pace of trust building because they're not interested in real trust. They want to hook you before you see what's behind the mask. Healthy love unfolds, it doesn't explode. Second, the pedestal. If someone puts you on an impossibly high pedestal, they will eventually knock you off it. No human can sustain idealization. When someone can only see the perfect version of you, they're not seeing you at all. They're seeing a projection, a fantasy, a need disguised as admiration. Real love has room for your flaws. Third, the test breakers. Watch carefully how potential partners respond to your small boundaries. Do they respect when you say you're too tired to go out? Do they accept when you need space? Do they honor your no in small matters? If not, they certainly won't respect bigger boundaries later. Healthy individuals might be disappointed by your limits, but they don't punish or pressure you for having them. Fourth, the unhealed wounds. We all have baggage, but there's a crucial difference between someone aware of their wounds and actively working on them versus someone who uses past trauma as a blank check for bad behavior. My ex cheated, so I need your phone password isn't protection, it's control. I had a rough childhood, so you have to handle my rage isn't vulnerability, it's abdication of responsibility. Fifth, the missing empathy. This is subtle but critical. How do they respond when you're hurting? Not when it's about them. Anyone can offer comfort when it makes them look good. But when your pain has nothing to do with them, when your stress might actually inconvenience them. Watch for the micro-expressions of annoyance, the quick redirection to their needs, the way your feelings become about them. Empathy isn't an act. It's either present or it's not. As you rebuild your life, implementing these awareness tools, you also need to strengthen your internal warning system, the gut instinct the narcissist worked so hard to dismantle. Start with small trusts. You don't have to immediately open your heart to deep intimacy again. Practice trusting people with tiny, low-risk pieces of yourself. Share a minor insecurity. Express a small need. Then watch how they handle it. Do they remember? Respect it. Use it against you later. Each positive experience helps recalibrate your trust meter. Work on sitting with discomfort. Much of what keeps us trapped in toxic patterns is discomfort avoidance. We'd rather have a familiar pain than an uncertain future. Practice tolerating the anxiety of setting boundaries, the loneliness of saying no to wrong relationships, the disorientation of trusting your perceptions when they differ from someone else's. Each time you survive these discomforts, they lose power over you. Develop discernment through contrast. Consciously seek out healthy relationships, not just romantic ones, but friendships, mentorships, any connection where mutual respect is the foundation. Notice how different these feel from your experience with a narcissist. How disagreements don't become character assassinations. How your needs are met with consideration, not contempt. How you feel more, not less, yourself in their presence. These contrasts help your system recognize what healthy love actually feels like. Create a self-trust ritual. Each day, check in with your body. Where are you holding tension? What interactions left you feeling drained versus energized? What decisions brought peace versus anxiety? This isn't about obsessive self-analysis. It's about re-establishing communication with your internal compass. Your body often recognizes threats before your conscious mind does. And perhaps most importantly, develop a relationship with your future self. The person you're becoming who has healed these wounds and learned these lessons. Make decisions from their perspective. Future me will thank present me for walking away from this red flag. Future me deserves the peace that comes from honoring this boundary. This creates a powerful alliance with the version of yourself who has already overcome what you're currently facing. As you implement these strategies, the narcissist's voice in your head will get quieter, the doubt will fade, the clarity will sharpen. You'll catch yourself standing taller, speaking more confidently, laughing more freely. You'll notice you're no longer constantly scanning for threats or molding yourself to others' expectations. This is what healing looks like. Not perfect, not immediate, but real. And here's something crucial to understand. Vulnerability isn't your weakness, it was your strength all along. Your openness to love, your willingness to see the best in others, your capacity for forgiveness, these aren't flaws to eradicate. They're gifts to protect with stronger boundaries and better discernment. The goal isn't to become hard, closed off, suspicious of everyone. It's to become wise. To create a life where your compassion flows toward those worthy of it, where your generosity isn't exploited, where your love isn't weaponized against you, where you can sleep at night without the whispers of doubt, without the knot of anxiety, without the constant vigilance of someone whose trust has been shattered. Tonight, as you settle into bed, imagine your body releasing another layer of the hypervigilance you've carried for so long. Feel the muscles in your shoulders loosen. Notice your jaw unclenching. Let your breath deepen. You're learning. You're healing. You're reclaiming not just your reality, but your right to peace. And tomorrow, we'll explore how to turn these wounds into wisdom that serves not just your protection, but your purpose. Dawn breaks. Another day, another chance to rewrite the script of your life. You've survived the unmasking, seeing the narcissist tactics for what they are. You've begun the breaking free, cutting contact, riding out the withdrawal, reclaiming your reality. You've started rebuilding your boundaries, learning the red flags, strengthening your inner warning system. Now comes the part no one tells you about, turning poison into medicine. Taking this brutal education and transforming it into something that serves not just your protection, but your evolution. There's a Japanese art called kintsugi where broken pottery is repaired with gold, making the cracks part of the beauty, part of the story. The piece isn't disguised as never having been broken, it's honored for having survived. That's what happens when you transform trauma into wisdom. You don't pretend the cracks aren't there, you fill them with gold. This is post-traumatic growth, the profound positive change that can emerge from struggle with adversity. It's not automatic, it's not immediate, and it's certainly not a silver lining that makes the abuse worth it. Nothing makes abuse worth it, but it is a path forward that honors the depth of what you've experienced by refusing to let it be meaningless. So how does this transformation happen? It starts with radical acceptance. Not of the abuse, never that, but of the reality that it happened. No more minimizing, it wasn't that bad. No more comparative suffering, others had it worse. No more magical thinking, if I'd just been more patient/understanding/loving, it would have been different. Just the raw, unvarnished truth. You were targeted, manipulated, and harmed by someone who saw your beautiful humanity as a resource to exploit. This acceptance doesn't happen once. It happens again and again, each time a memory surfaces, each time doubt creeps in. You meet each moment with the same quiet strength. This happened. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my failing. It was abuse. From this foundation of truth, you start to notice something extraordinary. Your perception has sharpened. Like a prey animal that survived a predator, your senses are heightened. You notice the subtle shift in someone's tone that indicates they're not being truthful. You feel the slight tension in a room when someone is trying to manipulate the group. You sense the mismatch between words and energy when someone's intention doesn't align with their claims. This heightened awareness isn't paranoia, it's wisdom. It's your system integrating everything it learned from surviving a master manipulator. Instead of fighting this sensitivity, lean into it, refine it, trust it. This is the gift forged in fire, an exceptional emotional intelligence that can guide not just your safety, but your ability to create authentic connection in a world full of masks. Next comes the reclamation of your voice. During the abuse, your truth was systematically denied. Your perceptions were questioned. Your needs were invalidated. Speaking up led to punishment, so you learned to swallow your words. But now your voice is your power. Start small. Practice saying simple truths out loud, even if just to yourself in the mirror. I didn't deserve that treatment. My feelings matter. I know what I experienced. Feel how your body responds to speaking truth after so long in silence. There might be trembling, tears, even nausea at first. That's normal. That's years of conditioning being rewired. Each time you speak your truth, the pathway gets stronger, the voice steadier. As your voice strengthens, you might feel a pull to use it for others still trapped in the fog. This is a common and beautiful evolution for survivors, the desire to transform personal pain into collective healing. Whether through formal advocacy, sharing your story, supporting a friend, or simply being the person who says, "I believe you," when someone else whispers their truth, your experience becomes medicine for others. But here's the crucial piece: your healing can't depend on helping others. That's a subtle trap that keeps you focused on the trauma rather than the life waiting beyond it. Your value isn't in being a survivor. It isn't in how well you can articulate the dynamics of abuse. It's in your inherent worth as a human being, independent of this chapter of your story. This brings us to perhaps the most profound transformation: reclaiming your right to joy. Not just fleeting happiness, but deep, unapologetic joy. During the abuse, your joy was threatening to the narcissist. It represented independence, self-sufficiency, a life they couldn't control, so they tainted it. They diminished your achievements. They created drama before your big moments. They ensured that joy always came with attacks of anxiety, criticism, or invisible strings. Untangling joy from fear is delicate work. It means giving yourself permission to want things again, to dream beyond survival, to pursue passion not because it's productive or impressive or useful to others, but simply because it lights you up from within. What did you love before them? What made you lose track of time? What dreams did you set aside because they seemed too big, too selfish, too impractical in the shadow of the narcissist's needs? Dust these off. Handle them gently. They're seeds of your future self. Start pursuing these with the same intensity you once put into managing the narcissist's emotions. Redirect that tremendous energy toward your own expansion. Take the class. Write the story. Book the trip. Apply for the job. Not because you're certain of success. Certainty is an illusion anyway, but because the pursuit itself is an act of reclamation. As you move forward, you'll notice your relationship with pain itself transforming. The hurt doesn't disappear, but it changes form. It becomes less of a torture and more of a teacher. You develop a capacity to hold difficult emotions without being consumed by them, to feel deeply without drowning, to navigate complexity with a steady hand. This emotional resilience isn't about becoming numb or detached. It's about expanding your capacity to feel everything: the pain and the pleasure, the grief and the joy, the anger and the compassion, without losing your center. It's about developing the inner strength to stay present even when the waves get rough. And from this expanded capacity comes the most unexpected gift: deeper connection, not despite your experience with the narcissist, but because of it. Having seen the hollow performance of false intimacy, you develop an exquisite appreciation for the real thing: conversations with genuine exchange, relationships with mutual respect, Love that sees all of you and chooses you anyway, not as a perfect object, but as a fellow traveler, beautifully human in your complexity. This journey from victim to survivor to thriver isn't a straight line. It's a spiral that revisits territory with new awareness each time. There will be days when the old fears resurface, when trust feels impossible, when the weight of what happened threatens to pull you under. On those days, remember, healing isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of compassion for yourself within the pain. Tonight, as you settle into sleep, place a hand on your heart. Feel its steady rhythm, the rhythm that kept beating even in your darkest moments. Whisper to it, "Thank you for carrying me this far. We're not done yet." And then rest, knowing that tomorrow brings another opportunity to fill your cracks with gold, to transform your wounds into wisdom, your pain into purpose, your survival into a life so rich and real that the narcissist fades to what they always truly were, a shadow overcome by light. The light shifts. Another day passes. You notice something unexpected happening, small moments where you forget to be afraid. Seconds where you laugh without calculating the consequences. Brief windows where the weight lifts and you remember who you were before all this. Hold on to these moments. They're not anomalies, they're glimpses of your future. But as healing progresses, you'll hit a phase therapists rarely warn you about. The second guessing. Did you get it wrong? Were they really a narcissist or just flawed like everyone else? Are you the toxic one for leaving, for giving up, for not trying harder? This doubt can be crippling, especially when memories of good times float to the surface, airbrushed by distance and longing. This doubt doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means you're human, complex, nuanced, capable of holding contradictory truths. Yes, there were good moments. Yes, there was real connection at times. No, that doesn't erase or justify the systematic dismantling of your sense of self. Both realities can exist simultaneously. The doubt serves a purpose. It's your mind processing the cognitive dissonance inherent in narcissistic abuse, the gap between who they pretended to be and who they actually were, between the relationship you thought you had and the one you were actually in. Sit with the discomfort of this gap. Don't rush to resolve it with easy answers or black and white thinking. The truth lies in the gray space between. As you navigate this territory, you might encounter the grief you've been too busy surviving to feel. Grief not just for what happened, but for what didn't, for the potential never realized, the love that wasn't real, the future that dissolved like mist. This grief has no roadmap. It doesn't follow the neat 5 stages we've been taught to expect. It comes in waves, in spirals, in sudden ambushes when you thought you were fine. Let it come. The grief is not a setback, it's a vital part of integration. It's your heart catching up to what your mind already knows. Each tear is an acknowledgement of what was lost. Each pang of sadness honors the depth of what you hoped for. Each moment of anger recognizes the injustice of what was done. Feel it all. You've earned the right to mourn. And as you grieve, something unexpected emerges, compassion. Not for them, they have to find their own path, but for yourself. For the you who stayed too long because you believed in love's power to heal. For the you who absorbed blame that was never yours because it felt safer than acknowledging the helplessness of loving someone incapable of real love. For the you who tried so hard, who gave so much, who believed against all evidence. This self-compassion isn't weakness, it's the foundation of your rebuilding. Every time you catch yourself in harsh self-judgment, I should have known better, I wasted so much time, how could I have been so stupid, pause. Place a hand on your heart. Speak to yourself as you would to a dear friend who survived what you survived. You did the best you could with what you knew then. You loved with your whole heart. That courage doesn't deserve contempt. As compassion grows, so does curiosity. Not about them, their motives, their new life, their next victim, but about you. What parts of yourself did you silence to keep the peace? What dreams did you defer? What needs did you deny? This isn't just idle questioning. It's archaeological digging through layers of adaptation and suppression to find the authentic core that's been there all along. This excavation reveals surprising treasures, strengths you never knew you had, the resilience that kept you going, the creativity that helped you navigate impossible situations, the depth that was forged in fire, the intuition that whispered the truth even when your conscious mind couldn't accept it. These aren't consolation prizes for what you endured, they're evidence of your indestructible spirit. As you reclaim these strengths, your relationship with trust transforms. Trust isn't naive belief anymore. It's not all or nothing. It becomes nuanced, something earned in increments, assessed continuously, given appropriately. You learn to trust certain people with certain parts of yourself, based on their demonstrated reliability, not their charming promises. You learn to trust situations based on evidence, not hope. And most importantly, you learn to trust yourself, your perceptions, your boundaries, your right to change your mind. This new approach to trust creates space for authentic intimacy, the real treasure hidden on the other side of trauma. Having seen the counterfeit up close, you develop an eye for the genuine article. You recognize true connection not by its intensity, but by its consistency. Not by grand gestures, but by small moments of attunement. Not by the highs, but by how conflict is handled, how imperfection is embraced, how separateness is respected. And here's where many healing journeys stall. At the threshold of new vulnerability, it's terrifying to open up again after being shattered. Your system screams that connection equals danger. Your hard-won boundaries feel like they might dissolve if you let anyone close. The risk feels too great. This fear isn't irrational. It's your protection system doing its job. Honor it. Tell it, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe." Then gently remind it, "But I cannot heal in isolation. I cannot experience the fullness of life from behind these walls." This isn't about dismantling your boundaries, it's about making them permeable and selective. Begin with low-risk connections, a class where you share thoughts but not deep emotions. A volunteer position where you work alongside others toward a common goal. A support group where others understand without explanation. These contexts allow you to practice being seen in small ways, to experience belonging without immediate intimacy, to remember that humans are capable of kindness without agenda. As comfort grows, you might find yourself drawn to deeper connection. This is where discernment becomes your greatest ally. Not hypervigilance, which sees danger everywhere, but true discernment, which can distinguish between discomfort due to genuine red flags and discomfort due to old triggers. When someone new enters your life, ask, "Does this person respect my no? Do they share appropriately, or do they flood me with too much too soon? Do they allow silence and space, or do they need constant contact? Do they accept my complexity, or do they need me to be simple and easy? Do they tolerate disagreement, or do they punish difference?" These aren't tests they pass or fail. They're data you collect over time, building a pattern that either earns trust or doesn't. As you practice this discernment, you'll notice something liberating. The narcissist's power diminishes. They become not the defining trauma of your life, but simply one chapter in a much longer story. They shift from an ever-present ghost to a lesson learned, a wound healed, a battle survived. This isn't about forgiveness, though that might come in its own time for your sake, not theirs. It's about reclaiming ownership of your narrative. You get to decide what this experience means in the arc of your life. You get to choose which qualities it highlighted, which strengths it developed, which values it clarified. You get to determine how it informs your future without defining it. This isn't positive thinking or silver linings. It's sovereignty, your absolute right to derive meaning from your own life on your own terms. Tonight, as you lie in the quiet dark reflecting on how far you've come, I want you to try something. Imagine your future self visiting you where you are now. See them clearly, the ease in their posture, the warmth in their eyes, the strength in their presence. They've integrated everything you're struggling with. They've transformed what feels like chaos into clarity. They've built a life rich with meaning beyond what you can currently imagine. Let them sit beside you on the bed. Feel their steady presence. What would they tell you about this moment you're in? What would they want you to know about the path ahead? What wisdom have they gained that would comfort you now? Listen in the silence. The answers might surprise you. Their visit isn't fantasy. It's a reminder that healing isn't just possible, it's already in progress. You're not just surviving anymore, you're becoming. And the person you're becoming, scarred but whole, cautious but courageous, wounded but wise, is exactly who the world needs. Not despite what you've endured, but because of how you've alchemized it into something luminous and real. So rest now. Let your body absorb these truths. Let your mind settle into possibility. Tomorrow brings another opportunity to reclaim what was taken, to discover what waits beyond recovery, to live not as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to the power of the human spirit to transform darkness into light. Morning comes, and you open your eyes to a room that feels different somehow. Not because anything has physically changed, but because you have. Each day of healing shifts your perspective slightly, like adjusting the lens of a camera until the world comes into sharper focus. Today you notice something subtle but profound. You're breathing more deeply than before. Your chest expands fully. Your shoulders drop away from your ears. Your jaw unclenches. These small physical changes reflect a deeper truth. Your body is beginning to understand what your mind has been learning. You are safe now. You are free. This is the shift from intellectual understanding to embodied knowing. It's one thing to recognize narcissistic tactics logically, to name the gaslighting, the projection, the intermittent reinforcement. It's another to feel the truth settle into your bones, to have your nervous system register that the danger has passed. This integration doesn't happen overnight. It happens breath by breath, moment by moment, as your body slowly rewrites the story of safety it tells itself. You notice this shift in unexpected places. Maybe you laugh at something on TV and realize you didn't immediately scan the room for someone's approval. Maybe you state an opinion without first calculating its reception. Maybe you make a small mistake and feel annoyance rather than terror. These moments aren't insignificant, they're evidence that your authentic self is re-emerging from hiding. But just as you begin to taste this freedom, the narcissist often resurfaces. Perhaps they send a text that seems innocent enough. Just checking in. Hope you're well. Found something that made me think of you. These aren't random communications. They're calculated fishing expeditions, hooks baited with nostalgia, concern, or curiosity, cast to see if you're still catchable. In the psychological literature, this is called hoovering, named after the vacuum cleaner, because they're trying to suck you back into the dynamic. It can happen days, weeks, even years after you've established distance, and it's dangerously effective because it targets the unhealed parts of you that still crave validation, closure, or resolution. When these attempts happen, and they almost always do recognize them for what they are, evidence that your absence is bothering them. Not because they miss you as a full human being with needs and desires of your own, but because they miss what you provided. Admiration, attention, emotional regulation, practical support. They miss the reflection, not the reality of you. The most powerful response isn't an angry tirade or a carefully crafted explanation of why things failed. It's silence, complete, resolute silence. Each time you don't respond, each time you deny them the engagement they seek, you strengthen new neural pathways in your brain. You affirm to your nervous system, this person no longer determines my emotional state. This person no longer has access to my inner world. This silence isn't about punishing them. It's about protecting yourself from being pulled back into a distorted reality where your worth is determined by their fleeting approval. It's about creating space for your authentic self to breathe, to grow, to remember what it loves and what it dreams of beyond the shadow of their influence. As this space expands, you might notice a painful pattern. The narcissist wasn't the first. Perhaps there was a critical parent, an emotionally unavailable partner, a fair-weather friend who abandoned you when you needed them most. Perhaps your life has been a series of relationships where you gave and they took, where your sensitivity was exploited rather than cherished, where your boundaries were seen as challenges to overcome rather than expressions of self-respect. This recognition can be devastating. Why do I keep attracting the same type of person? What's wrong with me that I end up here again and again? But these questions, though understandable, miss a crucial truth. It's not that you attract narcissists. It's that narcissists are attracted to your light, and until now, you lacked the tools to identify and deflect them early. Think of it this way. In a room full of people, the narcissist doesn't go for the person with impenetrable boundaries and a strong sense of self. They go for the person whose empathy is visible, whose desire to help is written on their face, whose openness signals receptivity to both love and manipulation. They go for you not because you're weak, but because your capacity for compassion is so strong it outweighs your instinct for self-protection. This isn't a flaw. It's a beautiful human quality that deserves to be honored, not exploited. The answer isn't to dim your light or harden your heart. It's to become more discerning about who gets access to your brilliance. This discernment starts with a revolutionary act, building a new relationship with yourself based on radical compassion, not the self-improvement kind of compassion that's just criticism in a prettier package. I need to work on my boundaries often means I'm doing this wrong again. But true compassion that meets your humanity with tenderness. Start by speaking to yourself differently. Notice the tone of your inner voice. Is it harsh, impatient, demanding? Does it sound suspiciously like the narcissist, or perhaps like someone from even earlier in your life? Whenever you catch this voice criticizing you for normal human needs or feelings, pause. Take a breath. Ask, would I speak to someone I love this way? If not, try again with the kindness you'd offer a dear friend. This inner relationship forms the template for every external relationship in your life. If you treat yourself as someone whose needs are inconvenient, whose feelings are excessive, whose boundaries are negotiable, you train others to do the same. But when you treat yourself as worthy of patience, understanding, and respect, you establish that baseline as non-negotiable for anyone who wants to be in your life. As this foundation strengthens, you'll still encounter triggers, those moments when a tone of voice, a certain look, a specific phrase catapults you back into the emotional state of the abuse. Your heart races, your vision narrows, your thinking becomes black and white. In an instant, you're back there, feeling small, trapped, desperate for approval. These flashbacks aren't regression, they're your mind attempting to process and integrate what happened. When they occur, ground yourself in the present. Feel your feet on the floor. Name 5 things you can see. Take slow, deep breaths that tell your body you're safe now. Then gently remind yourself, that was then. This is now. I survived. I'm healing. I'm free. Each time you navigate a trigger without either suppressing it or being overwhelmed by it, you reclaim another piece of your power. You demonstrate to yourself that you can feel intensely without being destroyed, that emotions move through you rather than defining you, that the past influences but doesn't determine your present. This growing resilience creates the conditions for what many survivors fear is impossible. Authentic connection after narcissistic abuse. Having seen the counterfeit up close, the love bombing that masquerades as genuine passion, the mirroring that pretends to be true understanding, you develop an exquisite capacity to distinguish real intimacy from its shallow imitation. You start to recognize authentic connection, not by the intensity of feelings, but by their texture and tone. Real intimacy has a gentle rhythm, advancing and retreating, revealing and pausing, always respecting the natural pace of trust building. It doesn't demand or rush. It doesn't create artificial crises to force closeness. It unfolds. In this unfolding, you notice stark contrasts to what you experienced with the narcissist. Healthy people respond to your boundaries with respect, not punishment. They listen to understand, not to gather ammunition. They remember what matters to you. They apologize sincerely when they hurt you. They show up consistently, not just when they need something. And perhaps most strikingly, they don't need you to be dazzled by them. They're comfortable with being ordinary, imperfect, human. This humanity feels almost disconcerting at first. You're used to the narcissist's constant demand for attention, for praise, for reassurance of their special status. You're accustomed to walking the razor's edge of their ego, never knowing what might trigger rage or withdrawal. The relative steadiness of a healthy person can seem boring, underwhelming, even suspect. Where's the drama? Where's the intensity? Where's the intoxicating rush of finally getting their approval after hours or days of emotional hunger? This is a critical juncture in healing. Many survivors, unconsciously craving the neurochemical roller coaster of narcissistic relationships, mistake the absence of drama for the absence of passion. They confuse steady respect with lack of interest. They interpret emotional safety as lack of chemistry, and so they find themselves drawn back to what feels familiar: the chaos, the unpredictability, the fight to be seen and valued. Breaking this pattern requires a radical redefinition of love, not as something you earn through constant emotional labor, but as something freely given and received between equals. Not as a state of perpetual yearning, but as a space of mutual nourishment. Not as a battle to be won, but as a garden to be tended with patience and care. This doesn't mean settling for lukewarm connections or denying the power of passion. It means distinguishing between the fire that warms and illuminates versus the fire that consumes and destroys. It means recognizing that true chemistry isn't just about the initial spark. It's about the sustainable heat that builds over time as two people reveal themselves fully and find acceptance. As you venture into new connections, friendships, romantic relationships, even work partnerships, you'll find yourself testing the waters cautiously. Is it safe to disagree? Is it safe to be uncomfortable? Is it safe to need something? Each small disclosure is a test, not of the other person's worthiness, but of the environment's safety for your authentic self to emerge. These tests aren't calculated or manipulative. They're the natural recalibration of your trust barometer. And when someone passes, when they respond to your discomfort with curiosity rather than defense, when they meet your need with generosity rather than resentment, when they welcome your full humanity rather than just the parts that serve them, something profound happens. Your nervous system begins to register that not everyone operates like the narcissist. Not everyone sees relationship as transaction. Not everyone needs you small so they can feel big. This realization is both heartbreaking and liberating. Heartbreaking because it contrasts so sharply with what you endured, highlighting the depth of what was stolen from you. Liberating because it confirms what a quiet part of you always knew: you deserved better. Not because you're perfect or never make mistakes, but because basic dignity and respect are the baseline of human connection, not prizes to be earned through self-erasure. As this truth sinks in, you might notice a shift in how you view the narcissist. They shrink from the all-powerful specter haunting your psyche to a deeply wounded individual whose emptiness led them to exploit your fullness. This doesn't excuse their behavior or suggest you should re-engage. It simply places them in proper perspective, not as monsters with supernatural powers, but as broken humans whose damage became your burden. This perspective shift is crucial because it returns your power. As long as you see them as uniquely, exceptionally destructive, they remain larger than life in your mind. But when you recognize the pattern, they represent the hollow core, the desperate need for external validation, the inability to connect authentically. They become just one example of a particular kind of brokenness that you now have the tools to identify and avoid. With this clarity comes a profound gift: discernment without hypervigilance. The difference is subtle but vital. Hypervigilance sees threats everywhere, keeping your system flooded with stress hormones, unable to distinguish between genuine danger and echoes of old wounds. Discernment, on the other hand, is calm, centered, clear-eyed. It sees what is, not what you fear. It registers red flags without catastrophizing. It allows you to remain present rather than projecting past trauma onto current situations. As you develop this discernment, your world begins to feel safer, not because the dangers have disappeared, but because you trust your ability to navigate them. You no longer need everyone to be trustworthy because you trust yourself to recognize when someone isn't. You no longer need perfect guarantees because you know you can handle disappointment without being destroyed by it. You no longer need to control outcomes because you've proven to yourself that you can adapt to whatever comes. This growing trust in yourself extends beyond relationships into every area of your life. Career decisions that once felt paralyzing with possibility for failure now become experiments you're strong enough to learn from. Creative pursuits you abandoned because the narcissist subtly mocked them become avenues for joy and self-expression. Your body, once a battlefield of criticism and comparison, becomes your ally, deserving of care and pleasure, not just utility and appearance. As these expansions occur, you might experience an unexpected emotion: grief for the self who didn't know how to protect these parts of you before. The self who gave away power so easily. The self who believed love meant earning someone's approval at any cost. The self who mistook control for care and intensity for intimacy. Honor this grief. It isn't regression or self-pity. It's acknowledgement of what was taken and what you've had to reclaim through painstaking work. It's recognition that while you're healing, the scars remain not as emblems of shame, but as evidence of your resilience, your capacity to rebuild from ashes, your unwillingness to be defined by what was done to you. This grief, when fully felt, makes space for something unexpected: gratitude. Not for the abuse, never that, but for the clarity it eventually forced. For the wisdom that can only be earned through struggle. For the profound appreciation of healthy connection that comes from having seen its opposite up close. For the depth of compassion you now feel for others still trapped in the fog, searching for the words to name what's happening to them. This gratitude becomes the foundation for perhaps the most powerful phase of healing: finding meaning beyond survival. At first, all your energy went to basic safety, establishing no contact, managing triggers, rebuilding basic trust in your perceptions. But as healing progresses, a new question emerges: now what? Who am I beyond the story of what happened to me? What gifts were forged in this fire that can now serve something larger than my personal recovery? For some, this manifests as formal advocacy, supporting others through the same journey, creating resources they wish had existed for them, working to raise awareness about narcissistic abuse. For others, it's more subtle, bringing heightened empathy to their work, parenting with a fierce commitment to breaking generational patterns, creating art that speaks truth to the invisible wounds so many carry. Whatever form it takes, this meaning-making isn't about finding a reason why you had to suffer. It's about refusing to let what happened be the end of your story. It's about transmuting pain into purpose, wounds into wisdom, survival into service, not because you're obligated to, but because doing so completes the journey from victim to survivor to thriver. Tonight, as you settle into sleep, notice how your body rests differently now. Feel the quiet confidence in your limbs, the steady rhythm of your breath, the clarity in your mind as it prepares for dreams. This peace didn't come easily. You fought for it step by step, tear by tear, truth by truth. You earned it by refusing to surrender your reality to someone else's distortions, by insisting on your right to wholeness even when it seemed impossible. And as you drift towards sleep, carry this truth with you. Your healing isn't just personal triumph, it's radical defiance against a culture that too often normalizes narcissistic behavior, that romanticizes control as love, that confuses power with worth. By reclaiming your right to be fully human, complex, flawed, wondrous, real, you create ripples that extend far beyond yourself. You become living proof that even the most carefully constructed cage has a key, and that key is the truth you refuse to abandon despite everything designed to make you doubt it. Sleep now, warrior. Tomorrow brings another opportunity to live not just as someone who survived the unimaginable, but as someone transformed by it, stronger, wiser, more compassionate, more authentic than you ever would have been without this journey through darkness into light. As this resilience deepens, your relationship with the past begins to transform. The memories don't vanish, the love bombing, the gaslighting, the devaluation, the discard, but they no longer carry the same emotional charge. You can revisit them without being consumed by them. You can see them for what they were, chapters in your story, not the whole book. This perspective shift is subtle but profound. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you start asking, "What did this teach me? How has this shaped who I'm becoming? What strengths emerged that I never knew I had?" This isn't about minimizing the trauma or finding silver linings in abuse. It's about refusing to let those experiences have the final word on who you are. The story you tell about what happened begins to shift. Not the facts, those remain clear and undiminished, but the meaning you attach to them. The narrative evolves from one of victimization, I was targeted and destroyed, to one of resilience, I was targeted but refused to be destroyed. The narcissist moves from the protagonist of your story to a character who appeared, caused damage, and exited, leaving you as the hero of your own journey. This narrative reconstruction isn't about denying pain or forcing forgiveness. It's about contextualizing what happened within the larger arc of your life, recognizing that while the narcissist shaped a chapter, they don't determine the entire plot. You are the author now, deciding how the story continues long after they've left the stage. As this authorship solidifies, you might notice a curious phenomenon. You stop needing external validation for your experience. In the early stages of healing, there was often a desperate quest for others to understand, to confirm, to witness what happened. Do you see what they did? Do you believe me? Was it really that bad? This need for validation is normal and even necessary when your reality has been systematically undermined. But as healing progresses, this need diminishes. You know what happened. You trust your memories. You recognize the patterns. Whether others validate your experience or not becomes less crucial to your well-being. This isn't about giving up on being understood. It's about no longer being dependent on that understanding for your own peace. This independence extends to your emotional landscape as well. You find yourself less reactive to situations that once would have devastated you. A misunderstanding with a friend, a criticism at work, a rejection in dating. These still sting. You're human after all, but they no longer shake your foundation. You've learned to distinguish between discomfort and danger, between someone else's opinion and your intrinsic worth. This emotional resilience doesn't mean becoming hard or closed off. It means developing a more nuanced relationship with vulnerability, choosing it consciously rather than having it exploited. You can open your heart without abandoning your boundaries. You can share your truth without needing others to agree with it. You can love deeply without losing yourself in the process. As these shifts solidify, you begin to notice something remarkable. The narcissist's voice in your head grows quieter. That internalized critic that echoed their judgments, that questioned your worth, that undermined your confidence, it doesn't disappear entirely, but it loses its power. You recognize it for what it is. Not truth, but programming you're in the process of rewriting. When that voice does arise, you're too much. No one could really love you. You'll fail like you always do. You respond differently now. Not with counterarguments or self-recrimination, but with gentle awareness. That's an old tape playing. That's not my truth anymore. This simple recognition often dissipates its power, like turning on a light in a room where shadows seem threatening. With this internal critic quieted, space opens for your authentic voice to strengthen, the one that knows what you need, what you value, what brings you joy. This voice isn't loud or demanding. It doesn't need to be, because you're finally listening. It speaks in gentle nudges, quiet moments of clarity, subtle shifts in your body's energy. This feels right. This doesn't serve me. This is where I want to invest myself. Following this voice leads to choices that might surprise people who knew you before. Perhaps you change careers, pursuing work that feeds your soul rather than just paying bills. Perhaps you move to a place that feels like home in a way you can't fully explain. Perhaps you end relationships that once seemed essential but now feel limiting. These aren't impulsive reactions, they're aligned actions stemming from deep reconnection with your truth. This alignment creates a kind of magnetic field around you, an authentic presence that naturally draws in compatible energies and repels discordant ones. You notice that different types of people are attracted to you now. Not the wounded who need fixing or the controlling who need compliant partners, but the whole, the genuine, the emotionally available. Without consciously trying, you find yourself surrounded by relationships characterized by mutual respect, reciprocal effort, and genuine care. These new connections differ qualitatively from past relationships. They have a steadiness, a transparency, an ease that feels almost suspicious at first. Where's the drama, the intensity, the anxious attachment masquerading as passion? It takes time to recognize that this calm is not boredom or lack of depth. It's what security feels like. It's what becomes possible when both people show up as themselves, not as projections or performances designed to extract validation. As these healthy connections multiply, your capacity for intimacy deepens in ways you might have thought impossible after narcissistic abuse. You find yourself able to be honest about needs without fear of abandonment. You can express hurt without it becoming a catastrophe. You can navigate conflict without it threatening the entire relationship. You can receive love without constantly questioning if you deserve it or when it will be withdrawn. This intimacy extends beyond romantic relationships to friendships, family bonds, even casual interactions. There's a quality of presence you bring now, an ability to see others clearly while allowing yourself to be truly seen. This mutual visibility creates connections characterized not by dependence or power dynamics, but by genuine recognition of each other's humanity. From this place of authentic connection, your impact on the world naturally expands. This isn't about grand gestures or public platforms, though those might emerge for some. It's about the ripple effect that occurs when someone moves through the world from a place of integrated wisdom rather than unhealed wounds. Perhaps you become the person who gently names the dynamic others can't yet see. Perhaps you create spaces where authenticity is valued over performance. Perhaps you model boundaries with such natural confidence that others find permission to establish their own. Perhaps you simply bring to your existing roles, parent, friend, colleague, citizen, a quality of presence that elevates every interaction. And in quiet moments of reflection, you might recognize the most profound transformation of all. The narcissist no longer occupies the central place in your mental landscape that they once did. They haven't been forgotten, the lessons are too valuable for that, but they've been right-sized. They're no longer the defining force of your life, but simply one character among many, one experience among thousands that shaped but did not break you. This right-sizing allows for a kind of completion that has nothing to do with forgiveness or reconciliation with them, and everything to do with reconciliation with yourself. You've reintegrated the parts you had to fragment to survive. You've reclaimed the voice that was silenced. You've remembered the self that existed before they tried to reshape it into their image. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, feel the quiet strength in this integration. There's a solidity to you now that can't be easily shaken. Not because you're invulnerable, you're still gloriously, messily human, but because you've built a relationship with yourself founded on truth, rather than the distortions of someone else's making. You know who you are. You trust what you feel. You value what you need. And from this foundation of self-trust, anything is possible. Not just survival, not just healing, but flourishing in ways you might not yet be able to imagine. The life force they tried to drain from you hasn't just returned, it's expanded. The spirit they tried to break hasn't just mended, it's grown stronger at the broken places. The future they tried to steal hasn't just been reclaimed, it's been reimagined on your own terms. This is your legacy from the fire. Not just that you survived, but how magnificently you learned to live. Morning breaks, and as light filters through your curtains, you notice something has shifted again. The wounds that once defined you have become wisdom that guides you. The pain that once consumed you has been transformed into purpose that drives you. You've moved beyond simply surviving the narcissist to creating a life so rich and authentic that their shadow can no longer reach you. This is what therapists call post-traumatic growth, the profound positive transformation that can emerge from struggle with adversity. It's not that the trauma was worth it. Nothing could justify what was done to you. But like a tree growing stronger and more resilient after weathering storms, you've developed qualities that wouldn't have emerged without the challenge. You notice this growth in unexpected moments. Perhaps you're in a meeting when someone tries to subtly manipulate the group. While others are swayed by charm or intimidated by aggression, you see the pattern instantly. Your narcissism radar, refined through suffering, picks up signals others miss. Not because you're paranoid, but because you've developed an exquisite sensitivity to manipulation. This awareness isn't hypervigilance anymore. It doesn't drain you or keep you constantly on edge. It's more like having learned a language that lets you read between the lines of human behavior. You notice the slight mismatch between words and body language, the strategic timing of compliments, the testing of boundaries disguised as jokes. And instead of feeling anxious, you feel calm. You simply make a mental note, not someone I need in my inner circle. And you move on. Your relationships have undergone a revolution as well. The people in your life now share certain qualities: authenticity, emotional responsibility, respect for boundaries, capacity for genuine reciprocity. These weren't conscious criteria you set, but natural selections made by your healthier self. Like recognizes like. Wholeness attracts wholeness. These connections have a different flavor than previous relationships. There's ease alongside depth, intensity without drama, closeness without loss of self, disagreements without destruction. This quality of relationship isn't just healing, it's revelatory. It shows you what was possible all along if you hadn't settled for crumbs, if you hadn't been convinced that love and pain were inseparable twins. This selective vulnerability creates possibilities for connection you never imagined after the narcissist's betrayal. You can share your fears without shame. You can express needs without apology. You can reveal your shadows without fear of them being weaponized against you. This transparency doesn't make you weak, it makes you real. And in a world full of performances and personas, realness is revolutionary. Your intuition, once muted by constant gaslighting, now speaks in a clear, steady voice. It's not dramatic or demanding, it doesn't need to be. You're finally listening. That quiet knowing guides decisions, both large and small: which job to take, which relationship to pursue, when to speak up, when to walk away. You trust this inner compass because it's calibrated to your authentic needs, not to someone else's approval. This self-trust extends to how you navigate triggers. They still arise a certain tone of voice, a specific power dynamic, a particular type of dismissal can still activate old neural pathways. But now, instead of being hijacked by these triggers, you witness them with compassion. Ah, there's my system remembering old danger. That makes sense. This witnessing creates space between stimulus and response, allowing you to choose your reaction rather than being driven by unconscious programming. Perhaps most profoundly, your sense of purpose has evolved. At first, healing was the purpose: getting free, getting stable, reclaiming basic functioning. But as integration deepened, a wider purpose emerged. Perhaps you found yourself drawn to support others on similar journeys. Perhaps you became passionate about creating environments at work, in community, in family where authenticity is valued and power isn't abused. Perhaps you developed art or writing that speaks truth to experiences often left in shadow. This purpose isn't a burden or an obligation. It's not about fixing everyone or saving the world. It's simply the natural expression of hard-won wisdom. It's what happens when pain is transformed rather than transmitted. It's the meaning that emerges when suffering is integrated rather than denied. This integration shows in how you speak about your experience now. Gone is the desperate need to convince others of what happened or to validate the reality of your pain. Gone too is the shame that once made you hide the story or tell it in whispers. You can speak of it clearly, calmly, with appropriate boundaries, neither minimizing its impact nor allowing it to define your entire identity. The narcissist has been right-sized in your narrative. They're no longer the villain who destroyed you, nor the all-powerful figure who determined your worth. They're simply a broken person who acted from their brokenness, and in doing so, revealed your capacity for healing and growth beyond anything you could have imagined. This doesn't mean you've forgotten or forgiven in some superficial spiritual bypass way. It means you've integrated the experience so thoroughly that it no longer holds power over your present or future. It's a chapter, not the whole book. A significant chapter, certainly, but not the one that determines how the story ends. And as for that ending, it's still being written page by page, choice by choice, day by day. But now you're the author, not just a character in someone else's narrative. You decide which themes to develop, which possibilities to explore, which voices to amplify. Your life becomes a creation rather than a reaction, an expression rather than an adaptation. Tonight, as you sink into sleep, there's a quiet certainty resting in your bones. Not that everything will be perfect, not that pain will never touch you again, but that whatever comes, you have the capacity to face it with the wholeness that was forged in fire. You have the wisdom to navigate complexity without losing yourself. You have the strength to remain soft in a hard world, open in a closed system, authentic in a culture of masks. This isn't just recovery. This is renaissance, the rebirth of a self so deeply connected to its own truth that no external force can truly threaten it again. The narcissist tried to consume your light. Instead, they inadvertently taught you how to make it burn so brightly that no shadow can extinguish it. And that, more than any revenge or justice or external validation, is the most complete victory of all. Light breaks through your window, painting patterns on your wall that seem different, somehow more vivid, more meaningful. Like the world is speaking to you in a language you're just beginning to understand. This isn't just healing. This is evolution. The person you're becoming now couldn't have existed without the crucible you survived. Think back to who you were before the narcissist. There was an innocence there, wasn't there? A belief that people generally say what they mean. That love doesn't deliberately hurt. That relationships might be challenging but not systematically destructive. That vulnerability is always met with care. The narcissist shattered these assumptions, and at first that shattering felt like pure loss. But now you see the gift hidden within the devastation, a vision of human nature so much clearer, so much more nuanced, so much more real than the simplified version you had before. You see people in their full complexity, now capable of both incredible kindness and stunning cruelty, driven by forces they themselves often don't understand, wearing masks even they believe are their true faces. This vision isn't cynical, it's accurate. It's a map of reality drawn with precision instead of wishful thinking. And having this map doesn't make you cold or distrustful, it makes you wise. You can still love openly, still connect deeply, still believe in human goodness, but now that belief is grounded in clear sight rather than naive hope. This clarity extends to yourself as well. Before the narcissist, you probably had blind spots about your own patterns, why you were drawn to certain types of people, why you tolerated behavior that hurt you, why you gave and gave even when nothing came back. The narcissist exploited these blind spots mercilessly, using them to keep you trapped in destructive cycles. But in fighting to free yourself, you had to shine light on these shadowed areas. You had to see yourself fully, not just your beautiful capacity for love and compassion, but also your fears of abandonment, your tendency to caretake at your own expense, your struggle to value yourself without external validation. This self-knowledge isn't a burden, it's liberation. Because what remains unconscious controls you. What becomes conscious can be transformed. And transformation is exactly what's happened. You've built an internal architecture that wasn't there before, boundaries that don't collapse under pressure, self-worth that doesn't depend on others' assessment, discernment that can distinguish between genuine connection and manipulation. These aren't just defensive measures against future narcissists. They're the foundation for a life of authentic power and peace. This transformation shows up in concrete ways across your life. Perhaps you notice it in how you approach new relationships with an openness tempered by healthy caution, extending trust incrementally rather than all at once, watching actions more than words, noticing how you feel in someone's presence rather than just how they make you think you should feel. Or maybe you see it in how you handle conflict, no longer terrified of disagreement, no longer abandoning your perspective to keep peace, no longer accepting blame for others' reactions. You've learned to stay grounded in uncomfortable conversations, to distinguish between productive discomfort and destructive pain, to walk away when necessary without drama or guilt. This growth extends to how you treat yourself. The constant self-criticism that once ran like background noise through your mind has quieted. In its place is a voice of compassionate honesty, acknowledging mistakes without shame, celebrating victories without needing external verification, valuing your needs without apology. This inner relationship becomes the template for every external relationship in your life. One of the most powerful transformations happens in your relationship with emotions. The narcissist taught you to fear your feelings, to see anger as dangerous, sadness as weakness, joy as fleeting and unreliable. You learned to suppress authentic emotion and perform whatever emotional display would keep you safe. This disconnection from your emotional truth was perhaps the deepest wound of all. Now you're reclaiming the full spectrum of your emotional life. You feel anger and recognize its wisdom, the boundary that's been crossed, the value that's been violated. You feel sadness and allow its depth, the genuine loss, the necessary grieving, the tender vulnerability at the heart of being human. You feel joy and embrace its likeness, the simple pleasures, the hard-won victories, the unexpected beauty that punctuates even difficult days. This emotional reconnection changes everything. It means you no longer need to numb out with substances, screens, or busyness. It means you can be present for your life as it happens instead of always bracing for the next crisis or dwelling on past pain. It means your decisions come from an integrated place of head and heart working together, not from fear or obligation or the desperate need for approval. The narcissist tried to convince you that your sensitivity was a weakness, your depth was an inconvenience, your complexity was a flaw. They wanted to reduce you to a simple character in their story, the admiring audience, the convenient scapegoat, the perfect mirror reflecting back only what served their fragile ego. They couldn't tolerate the full reality of you because it threatened the fantasy they'd built about themselves. But what they saw as weakness was actually your strength. Your sensitivity allows you to perceive nuances others miss. Your depth creates space for authentic connection in a world of superficial exchanges. Your complexity makes you interesting, evolving, alive in ways they can only mimic. These qualities weren't flaws to be fixed, they were gifts to be protected. And now you do protect them, not by hiding them away, but by sharing them selectively with those who have earned the right to your inner world. You've learned that vulnerability isn't something to display to everyone who asks. It's a precious resource to be invested wisely in relationships that can honor its value. This discernment isn't coldness, it's self-respect. As sleep begins to call you tonight, settle into this truth. What happened to you was real. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the devaluation, all of it was a deliberate campaign to break your spirit so you'd be easier to control. But it didn't succeed, not ultimately. Yes, there were moments of doubt, moments of despair, moments when you wondered if you'd ever find your way back to yourself. But here you are, still standing, still breathing, still capable of love and hope and dreams. The narcissist took much from you, but they couldn't take your essence, that indefinable quality that makes you uniquely you. In fact, their attempt to destroy it only revealed how indestructible it truly is. So rest now, warrior. Let your body sink into the mattress, heavy with the sweet exhaustion that comes from reclaiming your life piece by piece. Let your mind drift toward dreams uncontaminated by fear. Let your heart beat steady in your chest, a rhythm of resilience, a pulse of possibility. What lies ahead isn't just survival, not just healing, but a life so rich and real that the narcissist becomes exactly what they most feared: irrelevant. Listen to me now. You were never broken. You were never too much. You were never the problem. The narcissist didn't see your flaws, they saw your power and tried to take it. They saw your light and tried to dim it. They saw your strength and tried to break it. And for a while, maybe they succeeded. But here you stand. The person who survives narcissistic abuse isn't just strong, they're fucking indestructible. Because anyone can thrive when they're loved properly. It takes someone extraordinary to crawl through psychological warfare and emerge with their soul intact. That's you. The person who refused to let someone else's darkness define them. The one who stared into the abyss of another person's emptiness and chose not to become it. The one who rebuilt their reality brick by brick, while the narcissist was still trying to convince the world you were crazy. Remember this, they targeted you because you had something they could never possess: authentic humanity. The capacity for empathy, for connection, for love that doesn't need to control. They saw in you what they could only mimic, and they thought if they consumed you, they could become real. But you can't steal someone's essence. You can only reveal your own emptiness by trying. Every time you trust your own perceptions, now you win. Every time you honor your feelings, you win. Every time you set a boundary without apology, you win. Every time you choose yourself, your real, complex, beautiful self over someone else's fantasy of who you should be, you win. The narcissist doesn't get to write your ending. They don't even get to be a main character anymore. They're just one chapter in a story that was always yours to tell. A dark chapter, yes. A painful one, absolutely. But not the defining one. Your victory isn't just in surviving them. It's in discovering that you were always whole, even when they convinced you that you were shattered. It's in realizing that the voice they tried to silence is the one that saves you. It's in knowing bone deep that you can face anything now because you've already faced one of the most insidious forms of psychological destruction, and you're still here, breathing, growing, becoming. So tonight, as you close your eyes, feel the solid ground beneath you. Feel the steady beat of your heart, the heart they couldn't stop, couldn't own, couldn't break permanently. Feel the quiet power in your lungs as you breathe in what's rightfully yours: peace, freedom, possibility. The war is over, not because they surrendered, but because you stopped fighting on their battlefield. You created your own ground to stand on, your own reality built on truth, your own life defined by authenticity rather than fear. This is your renaissance, your rebirth, your reclamation. Not as who you were before, you can never be that person again, but as someone stronger, wiser, more gloriously real than you ever could have become without walking through that fire. The marks they left don't define you. They're just evidence of what couldn't destroy you. Sleep now with the unshakable knowledge that you've already survived the worst they could do. Everything from here is yours to create, and no one can take that away from you ever again. You are free.